We'll continue with our poem Mending Wall by Robert Frost. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are leaves, and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. So earlier we have seen that both the neighbors were doing the mending job of the wall, which they are normally doing once a year. The speaker and the neighbor have noticed the boulders in the wall which are falling to either sides. They find that some of these boulders look like loaves of bread, some are round like balls. They anticipate the difficulty in putting them back in use and believe that it would need a spell to balance them together so that the boulders stand on one another. It seems that no matter what they do, the boulders will fall down and they'll fail to stick. So, out of despair, the neighbors are yelling at the stones to stay put until they turn their back. Means they know that they'll not stay forever, but they just want to do their job or finish their job. They want to confirm that the wall stands intact, at least in their presence. This shows or indicates how difficult it was to mend the wall on a regular basis. The poet employs metaphor with loaves and balls to make a comparison to boulders. And further, he also personifies the stones so they could be yelled at. The use of these poetical devices of parallelism in the line to each the boulders that have fallen to each, where to each here emphasizes the fact that the speaker and his neighbor are indeed on the opposite sides of the wall. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. So, with the mending work, the fingers of the neighbors are rough and callous with the handling of boulders over and over again. They find the task just like any other outdoor game, with the wall line demarcating the two opponents playing from across the line. It comes to little more. There, where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. Here we can see for the first time in the poem that the poet brings out the difference in opinion the speaker has with his neighbor. The speaker says, as opposed to his neighbor, the presence of the wall is plainly unnecessary. Means the poet finds it unnecessary to build a wall between the two neighbors. He is totally skeptical of the wall, especially when there is no movable property. Means nothing would move on its own towards the other side or on the other side. So he is skeptical about the wall, especially when there is no movable property under threat of moving into each other's land. He mentions that they have two different kinds of orchard. The speaker also maintains that his apple trees won't ever cross to his neighbor's yard to cause damage to his pine trees. Similarly, his pine trees are not going to come and disturb his lot of apple trees. Hence, there is no need of putting a wall, so it is a futile exercise. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Means the neighbor does not pay heed to the arguments the speaker puts. Means maybe he has put these arguments before his neighbor, but he doesn't want to listen to him, and he only maintains, or he has his opinion, or he feels that good fences make good neighbors. The phrase good fences make good neighbors has been around for centuries in different words and formations, But it was Frost who phrased the popular phrase to reiterate the old wisdom. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. When spring arrives, our speaker becomes a bit mischievous in his attempts to convince his neighbor to rethink about his decision of putting up a wall and mending it when the gaps are visible. In the coming lines, the speaker tries to convince his neighbor that the other way and nearly accuses him of being a believer of old traditions, antiquated traditions. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Means he is putting all the arguments before his neighbor that why do we need a wall between us? He is continuing with the same pace and tone. The narrator asks why the walls can make good neighbors. He asks his neighbor or reasons his neighbor for putting up the wall, that what is the purpose behind it. He argues that walls are needed when there are cows and that are needed to be kept from the neighbor's premises. But since there are no cows and only trees, there is no need for a wall in between. Before I built a wall, I'd asked to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom was I like to give offense. The speaker continues to argue his stand and says every time he builds the wall, he'd ask to know what was he walling or walling out. He always asked what was being separated and what was being brought together with the wall they were constructing. He also asked whether this wall would offend anyone. The poet here uses alliteration in what I was walling in or walling out to powerfully express his concern. Moreover, there seems to be a clever use of pun through offense, which sounds like a fence. Something there is that doesn't love a wall and that wants it down. The poet again points out that there is some force that doesn't love a wall and wants it to go down. It invokes a sense of mystery in the minds of the readers about that something. I could say else to him, but it's not else exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. Therefore, the speaker is desperate to find ways to convince his neighbor otherwise. He says that he could point toward else as the reason for bringing down the wall, but he knows it is not really the else, so he suggests that the neighbor should come up with the reason for the same on his own. Here the poet makes an allusion to elves. The elves are little tiny mythical supernatural beings from some folklores. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. So despite all his efforts and hopes and dreams of turning the neighbor on his side, the speaker sees that the neighbor is bringing stones grasped firmly by the top in each of his hands. He looked like an armed old stone savage, totally unaffected by the speaker's intentions and desires or intentions. With the use of like, the poet is using a simile to compare the appearance of the neighbor with an armed old stone savage. This is also symbolic in suggesting that the neighbor's thoughts and ideas were archaic. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. The speaker now firmly believes that the neighbor is living in darkness, not just the darkness due to woods and tree shades. The speaker feels that the neighbor is under the tight grip of darkness of ignorance. He is not able to see through it. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. The speaker ultimately says that his neighbor is unwilling to compromise his hereditary wealth, means the things or the ideas that are ingrained in his mind. He is unwilling to go beyond that. Whatever his father had said, he probably likes how well he can remember it. So the neighbor stands his ground and utters again, good fences make good neighbors. This means that the poet is unable to convince his neighbor about the usefulness of walls. Thank you.